Hey, what is up, everybody? Welcome to the Guilty as Charged podcast, coming to live on a Tuesday evening. I don't think there's anything else going on tonight, so grateful for your attention on what should be an uneventful Tuesday evening in the United States of America. In all seriousness, my name is Steven, and I'm the host. Joining me, as always, is my good friend Tyler. Tyler, what's up, man? How you doing tonight?
Doing well. I'm glad to be here and just distracted from what's going on. Yes, I've been keeping up with the thing that's going on in America, but for maybe an hour, we can just forget about it, talk about Chargers football, and then get back to worrying or stressing or whatever it is Americans want to do on election night.
Yes, I would much rather be talking about the Chargers than dealing with everything else. I'm not super into election night. I'm gonna hop off this stream and I'm gonna go watch the latest episode of The Penguin. So I cast my vote, and I hope everybody else did. But I'm not a big politics follower overall. All right, so tonight we're going to be talking about the Chargers film review from the Cleveland Browns game. A lot of takeaways to dive into. I think it is worth mentioning, at least briefly, the trade deadline and things that happened today. Obviously the fan base was very plugged into Twitter today, hoping and willing for a trade. And it was kind of an adventure, right? Like, I was not expecting anything much from today. And then Adam Schefter drops that the Chargers are one of the 4 contenders to land Marshawn Lattimore. It also leaked out that they were interested in Patriots and former Vikings wide receiver KJ Osborne. We know they were interested in Mike Williams. We know they were interested in Deontay Johnson. So the Chargers were in on a lot of conversations. And unfortunately, I think for them, things just kind of did not pan out the way that they expected from a trade market standpoint. Mike Williams goes for a 5th-round pick. I mean, Jonathan Mingo got traded for a 4th-round pick today. And so it was just kind of a mark that I think kind of that got out of hand for where they're at as a team, as an organization. They certainly did not have the draft resources that the Washington Commanders do have and did have to offer to the New Orleans Saints. I don't think really anybody outside of the Commanders had that opportunity to go swing that kind of trade. So the Chargers were in on a lot of different conversations, but unfortunately, no trade materializes. So, Tyler, what are your thoughts as we kind of sit here a few hours later that the Chargers are kind of riding with who they have right now?
It's a mixed conversation. So on the one hand, and on the whole, I guess, I'm not particularly disappointed. I'm certainly not in the realm of Chargers fans that are extremely unhappy with the lack of moves, as if Joe Ortiz has not earned a ton of credit for moves, including 2 trades this entire season. At the same time, it would have been nice to add somebody. Of course, if they are interested in these names, maybe there's been an offer for those 4 names, let's say, would have been nice to add one of those guys, especially with, Simi Fehoko probably going on IR at this point. You showed me the photo of his elbow. Looks like he got run over practically based on that injury. He didn't, but it looks awful. So it would have been nice to have, let's say, a KJ Osborne or even a Deontay Johnson. The disappointing thing really isn't really that they didn't make a move. It's that every team that's seated ahead of them in the AFC decided to make moves. And that's maybe more frustrating than anything. The Chargers, I think, believe in themselves and what they're doing. They're going to get some additions just because they're coming off of IR. So hopefully they feel good. And Jim Harbaugh has said they feel good about the guys they have. Of course, he's going to say that he believes in his guys. And honestly, like, the Chargers will make the postseason with this current group. My concern is once they get to the AFC postseason and the Steelers have made moves and the Chiefs have made moves and the Ravens have made moves and the Bengals have made moves, and you're playing those teams coming up pretty soon, it gets a bit tricky, trying to discuss how far the Chargers can go. So I don't mind that they didn't make moves, but I am a little bummed that the other AFC teams did.
Yeah, there were a lot of trades that happened today. I think 11 players ended up getting traded, which was, I want to say, the most that the NFL's had in quite some time. So the NFL pushed the trade deadline back a week, and I think it helped teams, convince themselves of trading. So if this were last year, a player like Marshawn Lattimore probably does not get traded. So I think that's encouraging, right? And I think it's encouraging that the Chargers were actually talking to several different teams about players. Previously under Tom Telesco, it was like, well, they were calling around like one specific player, like nothing really ever like got super far. they were pretty close to landing Deontay Johnson. From what we heard, they were pretty heavily interested in the Mike Williams conversation. They were interested in the Marshawn Lattimore conversation and just didn't have the resources to go get him. So they're at least like advancing to the stage where, okay, like they're making it interesting. And like you mentioned, we already have seen Joe Ortiz swing 2 trades after training camp and getting Elijah Molden and Taylor Heineke. So I understand, like I wanted them to make a trade too. I felt like there were some potential cornerbacks out there that they could go fortify their depth. But at the same time, it's like, the Chargers don't really need like a Tre'Davious White. They don't really need like a Ronald Darby. They got pretty decent play from Eli Apple this past Sunday, which is crazy in and of itself. So I think the Chargers feel good with where they're at and their ability to develop players. And they're going to go out and, mine the free agency fields. A lot of these players that people might be interested in might get cut over the next week or two. They're interested in trading for KJ Osborne. Maybe the Patriots decide to move on from him and cut him outright. And then maybe that becomes the guy that they go out and sign. So I think Joe Ortiz, like you mentioned, has proven that he will do anything possible to make this team better. It just didn't pan out today for a trade.
Yeah, and you're always curious what the other teams were thinking. I mean, we had suggested Osa from the Cowboys, for example. Well, they were acquiring talent today.
Yeah.
Maybe the Cowboys think that they're still going to contend with Cooper Rush and whatever else they're deciding to do. So, of course, like some of these teams that maybe we thought were available for or open to a trade, they weren't exactly giving away. They were trying to get players. So it's fine. Would have loved another player, but I'm not overly disappointed. The season is still going to continue. The Chargers will win several more games, but we'll see how it affects them in the postseason.
Yeah. And I think that's the difference of the way that these other AFC GMs probably approach today versus what Joe is trying to do. Joe's trying to balance for next year. They're projected to have 11 draft picks next year and $100 million in cap space. If you're Joe, you're probably not trying to give away too many resources for next year. Whereas a team like obviously the Chiefs, the Ravens, the Lions, they're all in on this season on potentially making it to the Super Bowl. That doesn't mean that the Chargers are not trying to go out and make trades, but it's kind of a different mindset of how aggressive you're willing to be based off of where you're at for this current season. So you mentioned the Simi Fogo thing. It seems like he's going to be going on injured reserve, obviously. If you have not seen that picture, I tweeted it out from the Guilty as Charged podcast Twitter account. He shared it on his Instagram page. You can go feel free and sign that. And then the Chargers did release Eric Tomlinson today, the tight end, who's kind of their third, fourth tight end. As a vested veteran, he can go right back to the practice squad. So the Chargers have 2 roster spots open essentially right now. They can go out and, sign some of these veterans. They can promote somebody from the practice squad. There's going to be some changes here. I think Jalen Reagor is probably a natural, elevation at this point based off of how they've used him. He's out of practice squad elevations, and they do need a special teams wide receiver. So I would expect that to happen. Yeah. And then we'll see what happens with Eric Tomlinson's spot. But technically speaking, they could go out and get, one of these players who was released today or do something else that way. So the Chargers are going to make moves. Like Joe Ortiz has shown this. It's just, didn't come in the form of a trade today, and that's okay.
Yeah, it's fine. Okay. I don't need to see a ton more of Jalen Reagor, but I am intrigued by their interest in him. And now that Darius Davis, I think, has returned, we think he's good. The hamstring was clearly fine on Sunday. I'm curious how they would use a Jalen Reagor. I'm not overly excited, but they are very interested in him. So I guess it answers the question of like, who do you keep around when everybody's healthy? Well, 1, Brendan Rice got hurt, but then 2, now with DJ Chark coming back, who do you keep? I think you just keep the guys you have. Tomlinson, that was a whirlwind because he was the guy we thought they would cut immediately. Then he was kept. He was a captain, and they kept him for a while.
Yeah,
but yeah, I think Steven, you got your wish to get Tomlinson off your screen.
Yes, we'll see what happens there. But last thing before we move on here, a lot of people were very frustrated at the DJ Chark situation on Sunday. I poked around and I was able to, get some information that the Chargers were a little nervous about having all of these guys coming back from injury and potentially not having enough healthy bodies on special teams and specifically, like any kind of vertical threats. So there was some skepticism about them bringing back Quentin and Chark and Darius Davis all from injury at the same time. And what if somebody gets re-injured? What if multiple somebodies get re-injured? And then you're just stuck with Ladd and Palmer and Simi Fehoko, and then you're just kind of like SOL. So that was unfortunately, we have to wait another week to get the debut from DJ Chark, but I do expect that to happen this upcoming week against the Tennessee Titans. So sometimes you have to do these kind of roster management things just because a lot of your room is injured and you're a little, anxious about other injuries after that.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, and even the guys that were going into the game healthy, Palmer, McConkey, and Fehoko, all had dealt with something this year, had missed time, had been pulled from games. So I completely understand. It was very strange. It shocked me. It shocked the Chargers media who posted a DJ Chark jersey. But hey, if he's back this week, awesome.
Yeah. So I do expect him to play this week, but it was definitely a surprise. People had some fun with, the tweets and things like that. But, I think everybody, including the social media team, expected DJ to play last week. Yeah. So expect to see him on Sunday. And hopefully that is kind of the addition that the Chargers offense needs. More on them later today, I think. All right, let's get to our film review. If you're new to the show, or if this is the first time you're tuning into this specific episode, we try and do this at least every Tuesday after we have watched the All 22 tape. So if you're not following us on Twitter, definitely encourage you to go do that. We each tweet out some clips every single week. And so today we're going to be diving into some of the takeaways from what we watched on tape. We're going to start with a segment about an unsung hero. And then our second topic is going to be a narrative of the week, something that we believe is a relevant overarching theme of the week, if you will. And then we're going to touch on something that we each think is real or fake from, week 10. Essentially, what are we buying and selling from that specific week? Mm-hmm. All right, Tyler, let's start with our unsung hero. You and I had the same person who I stole. So I'll let you go with the other option here. Who is your other unsung hero of the week?
It was a tricky week. One, because we came to the same conclusion, which is good, which means we saw generally the same things with this player. And I think fans will be happy to hear who it is.
Yeah.
But I think everyone in this game was either really good and there was proper songs sung of them, or they were just bad and I didn't want to sing a single song about them. So it was tricky to really find like an unsung hero, especially someone we hadn't talked about a ton. So I'll go with Morgan Fox in this game, who's quietly been like 25th out of 136 in, pass rush win rate, pass rush productivity. And he had almost 3 sacks on Sunday, had 2, almost had a third one. Somehow James Winston escaped and then threw an interception that Derwin dropped. One of the worst impossible 1-2s in terms of missed opportunities, but it's fine. Chargers defense was just fine on Sunday. But I think Morgan Fox continues to be solid. I don't know what this pass rush is going to look like if he goes down. There's not much in the interior without him. It's him, I think, before this game at 21 pressures, or I think he's currently at 21 pressures. And everybody else is kind of like 15 or 16 and 11 or whatever it is. He's the better pass rusher of this group. Played solid. So he's my unsung hero. Admittedly, not a ton to pick from, in my opinion.
Yeah, so Morgan Fox has 16 pressures, 4 sacks. His pass rush win rate is 12%. So it was a bit of a slow start for Morgan Fox. We're getting back to the player that he's been in the past. But yeah, outside of him, Puna is getting consistent. He's crushing the pocket at a really high level. And there are a couple reps here or there that are okay, this is a guy that you can see, winning on the, against the offensive guards every single week. So he had a spin move last week against the Saints and then flat in the corner. I was kind of blew my mind to get a sack on, I believe that was Hainer in at that time. But he's at a pass rush win rate of 6%. So it's not necessarily a great group of pass rushers. Otito Ogbonia is at 3.8%. Tier Tart is at 11%. So that's pretty good. He's again a pocket crusher, but he can do some things every once in a while as well. But if Morgan Fox goes down, that's your true pass rusher. I would assume that maybe Justin Eboigbe could see the field at that point. But I think Morgan Fox is a good call out because, he's consistently doing the little details every single week. He's defending the run at probably the highest level of his career, I would say. And finally he gets a big, explosive pass rush output. And I think both of the sacks were on crucial plays. So shouting out Morgan Fox is fantastic. Go vote for his foundation or whatever for the military. I think he does great work there. So he earned it on that Sunday.
Yeah, great hands, really active feet. It felt like the most active his feet have been with his hands all season, and just led to some very good plays against not Pochik. Who's the
Teller is the right guard.
There you go. Sure, Teller.
Right, Teller. Yeah, Fox also had he got his paw up and deflected a pass too. I don't know if you mentioned that earlier, but it was a good play for him. Okay, my unsung hero of the week. It feels weird labeling him as this, but it is Mr. Derwin James. There's not been a ton of publicity about Derwin James this season, and some fans have labeled that as him being washed or being cooked or things like that. And I don't think that's a fair assessment. I think it's fair to say he is not the impactful player that he was in 2021, even in 2022, or obviously not in his rookie season. He's not getting the splash plays as frequently. But if you watched the All-22 or if you're at games, the communication that Derwin James is bringing to the table on every single play, he is just getting everyone in the right positions. The alignment is fantastic. There was this play that I tweeted out where Eli Apple was a dropper in a Tampa 2 concept, which is crazy. And Derwin was the one who pointed it out, okay, this is your responsibility. You could see him and Eli Apple kind of working through it. So the communication from Derwin James is at a really, really high level all season long. And Jesse Minter has talked about how Derwin is just completely bought into the system and locked into the system. And even though the splash plays are not coming, he's having a really, really strong impact out there as kind of like a coach on the field type. Well, then this Sunday comes, and I think this was genuinely one of the better coverage games from Derwin James that I've seen. They matched him up with David Njoku quite a lot, and David Njoku did not have very much room to run in any direction. There were a couple times where Derwin was essentially running the route for him. Unfortunately, he did drop that interception you just mentioned about, but he was in position for another one that pass got tipped at the line, I want to say by Denzel Perryman. There was a deep over route that he took from Elijah Moore and forced an incompletion. So Derwin was fantastic in coverage. I thought he played the run very well. So this to me was maybe not his most impactful game of the season, maybe not his most impactful game of his career, but I just enjoyed watching him. He was consistently in the right positions. He was consistently communicating, getting other people to be in the right positions. I thought just mentally from a coverage standpoint, he was really, really dialed in on Sunday, and it showed. Again, he should have caught the interception. I think he will tell you that as well. But it was still a very, very smart play. It was a very good reaction. And he was just consistently in the right position all day long.
Yeah, I think we're all waiting for the 15 tackle, almost like what we saw against the Steelers. That kind of that physical, violent Derwin James that did get him suspended. But generally speaking, we like that mentality and the way he plays. That's the Derwin James we all kind of fell in love with. But it's nice to turn on the film and see what he does when we can't even tell most of the time. During the broadcast, all we saw was the dropped interception, the weird guy caught the football but almost was an interception because he ripped it from his hands. That's kind of all we saw from Derwin James. But turning on the film, like you said, the communication, the way he worked against Njoku and these receivers, I think he was targeted 4 times, gave up 1 catch, was just very solid in coverage, good in the communication. Again, not the best defensive player on the field. We'll get to him, but I think he was just very impactful without you really being able to tell on the broadcast view. So I'd really about halfway through watching the defensive film, I figured, yep, that's my guy. Went to our document, saw you had him, and that makes me happy. I would love to talk about the real big breakout game and the multiple interceptions and all that, but I'm happy to talk about him as an unsung hero too, because I think we've kind of been waiting for games like that from him.
Yeah, I don't think we're going to see him. I mean, he might get to the Pro Bowl just based off of name recognition and the defense being so good. I don't think he's playing at the same level, but he's not playing poorly either. I think people have painted him as this player who's not contributing to their success, and I don't think that's accurate. I think part of the reason why the Chargers have been able to sustain the injuries at cornerback is because Derwin can go in and play the slot And this week he's matched up with Jerry Jeudy, he's matched up with Elijah Moore, he's matched up with David Njoku. And you didn't really see a lot from those guys. And those are good players. I mean, Chargers fans were actively clamoring for the Chargers to go trade for David Njoku, who's a really, really good tight end. He had a couple, good catches, but for the most part, he was not a factor in that game. And I think a large part of that is due to Derwin James. And we're very used to that, right? We're very used to Derwin James going out and covering a tight end and doing a great job. But this one, I think it just really allowed the other players around him to play free. And that's kind of what I'm learning about this group, is that because Derwin can play so well in the slot and he can play so well at safety, the other guys, it doesn't put as much pressure on them to be who they are not. Like, you can allow Tarheeb still to go be aggressive on the football. You can allow Cam Hart to go make tackles in run defense and things like that. So Derwin James might not be making these splash plays. I think we will see a splash game from him soon because he's just kind of been around the football a lot. But he's allowing everybody else in the secondary to be themselves. And I think that is tremendously valuable to the way that Jesse Minter coaches football.
Yeah, and as a addition to or to the side of all this, I love watching all three safeties out there, seeing 22-3 and 32 out there. The way they operate and shift and move together, it's beautiful. Like, I wasn't sure how much Elijah Molden would play. We thought heading into week 1 it would be AJ Finley, but it's beautiful watching them out there, and that's a big credit to Derwin.
Yeah. Yeah, Jim Harbaugh thought that they might have the best safety duo. I think firmly they have the best safety trio. I can say that. I think Elijah Molden is really, earning a second contract with the team. I would love to see him back next season. All right, let's get to our narratives of the week. I'll start with this one on maybe a bit of a more negative side of things. You're gonna be spinning a positive narrative. The Chargers' run game is kind of a mess. I think the identity that Jim Harbaugh wants to play with from the run game is just not a tenable situation for the Chargers right now. He wants to bring in multiple tight ends, Scott Matlock. He wants to run power and gap schemes, and he wants to pound the rock, and he wants to be able to, control the clock. And I think some of that is fine, but this is not a run game that is really kind of functioning at the way that they want it to. The run game that works for them is out of 11 personnel, which is 3 receivers, 1 tight end. And they're able to create some misdirection with their guards and create alleyways that way. So they run a lot of pin and pull concepts. They run a lot of counter trap concepts. That's how they can be successful on the ground. And I think if they continue to just kind of pound their head against the wall with these heavy personnel gap concepts, it's just not going to work. Unfortunately, even if Gus Edwards comes back and is your power running back, right? The best aspects of the Chargers run game are when they can spread them out, get the 3 receivers on the field, and then they can create space with the movement skills of the offensive lineman. Get Joe Alt on the move, get Zion on the move, get Rashawn on the move, and create alleyways and space for J.K. Dobbins, who has great vision to work his way through that way. So if the run game can kind of pivot here to the shotgun runs, to the 11 personnel runs, I think they'll be able to be a more successful run game, because right now they're like 29th in the league in rushing success rate. And a large part of that is because they're getting 2 yards a pop when they go into big, heavy personnel. And that's just not a super viable way to play offense right now. So I would love to see them kind of pivot away from those. I'm not saying get rid of them completely, but when they bring the big bodies in and they bring everybody in there, they just don't have the bodies to go hat on hat and match up with a team like the Cleveland Browns, who do have a lot of talent up front. So I think they kind of got to pivot away from what they wanted to be their identity and kind of create a new one with the shotgun 11 personnel looks.
Yeah, they definitely have enough pieces where they can not overhaul, but shift enough of their rushing attack to make it work. The touchdown with Dobbins, flowing left beautifully, a little bit of an over pursuit by the Browns. Dobbins cuts back, boom, touchdown. Now, they won't always be that quote unquote easy, but that seemed to fit them. Where, like you mentioned, when everyone's just kind of stuffy and stuck together, you start mentioning, or you start noticing that each guy makes their own mistake at different times. I mean, I was going through and I was just curious, like, what is happening on each play? And every time I looked at one of the runs that were, for like 1, 0 or negative, there was no consistent loser in that group. It was Bozeman, then it was Zion and Bozeman, then it was Pipkins, then it was Pipkins again, then it was Zion, then it was Eric Tomlinson, then it was Joe Alt. Like there was no consistent, like, oh, here's the clear weak link. It just seemed like when everything's cramped like that, it's almost like they don't have the personnel that they want to run to be able to run what Greg Roman wants or what they've been trying to run so far. So yeah, anything different would be great. You know, there was some pushback in our comment section about like, well, you know, Dobbins has these great like overall numbers, and look at the end of the game. Look, his yards per carry, whatever it was really strong. If you just look at the box score, you think, great, that's the amount of, that's the yards I want, that's the average I want, good. But their success rate, like I think everyone can admit, like if you think this is a good rushing offense, you can admit last year was not a good rushing offense, including week 1, which is a great performance. If you don't include it, it was a historically bad rushing offense.
Yeah.
That rushing attack success rate was 33.1% in success rate last year. Not great, at 30th in the league. This year it's 34.6. So they were 33.1 last year. Everyone can agree it was historically bad and terrible. This year they're one spot higher and they're only at 34.6%. Like that's kind of what we're dealing with here, guys. You know, I know, again, the numbers on a per play basis aren't so bad if you just look at it as is, but this team and the whole offense for that matter, and we'll get into it later, can't live off just the explosive, like 3 plays in the game. You got to have more than that because yes, they did score a touchdown off an explosive play. Yes, they did score at the end of the game. Those are great. But there's also like 3 drives in the third quarter where they went for 1 minute. And that's part of it's the passing game too. But you can't have those as well. You can't go into the postseason and just be completely unsuccessful for a quarter and a half and then score 1 touchdown off of 1 play. Like, oh, okay, yeah, we're good. Like that's a good rushing attack. Can't do that.
Yeah, for those of you who don't know, when we refer to success rate, what that is, basically it's first or second down. Can you get half the yards? So a first down carry, if it's not a 5-yard carry, that's deemed not successful. 2nd and 6, you get 2 yards, that's not successful. 2nd and 6, and you get 4 yards, that's successful. And then a third down carry that converts a first down, that is successful. So it's not a super complicated stat. I know a lot of people out there kind of push back against like EPA per play because it tries to estimate the points that you're adding on a per play basis. It's a little confusing. Success rate is not that confusing. It's basically, are you getting half the yards of the down? And if yes, that's a successful play. Very basic concept. And so the Chargers EPA per rush is very high because J.K. Dobbins has a lot of explosive runs. I think he's 3rd in the league in runs of 10 plus yards or more. So the yardage total looks very good because he's consistently hitting those explosive runs, but that doesn't change the success rate, right? Like his 1 explosive run is 1 successful run. It doesn't, change it that way. So overall, like I think J.K. Dobbins is a really, really good running back. I think he's proven that. I think his vision and his explosiveness, it creates that. But it's the way that the Chargers are trying to stay on schedule that's, kind of deterring them. So they are 2nd in the league in neutral passing rate at this point in time after the bye week. So they've made that switch where first down, they're passing the ball a lot. But if you pass the ball a lot and then you run the ball on 2nd down and you're unsuccessful on 2nd down, you're still in like you're still potentially in like a 3rd and 8 situation. So the Chargers average 3rd and down distance this past week was 7.5 yards. It was, I think, 25th highest in the league this week. The Seattle Seahawks 3rd down average distance was like 11.5, which is really, really bad. So if you're the Chargers, right, and you know that you can't really trust your interior offensive line to hold up, and you're consistently in 3rd and 7, 3rd and 8, 3rd and 9, it's a really difficult way to play offense. It just is. And they're creating a lot of explosive plays right now, and that's great. And you can win football games like that, obviously. But I think the reason we're bringing this up is because we want them to eventually be able to get into a situation where they can go win a playoff game. Because if you go into Buffalo or into Pittsburgh and they put a ceiling on your passing attack and they bottle up J.K. Dobbins, well, you're not scoring very many points that game. You're going to lose. You're not going to win a game against the Steelers, with you have 13 points on the board. So they've got to figure a way out on the ground to make this a more successful rushing attack, or it's going to be a very high variance offense. And we've seen that, right? Against the Arizona Cardinals, they couldn't run the football and they scored 5 field goals and that was it. Against the Saints and the Browns, they were able to be very explosive and they scored a lot of points, but that's not going to be every week. So the run game is very important. They have to be able to make this change, I think, so that they can stay on schedule and allow the offense to just be more consistently good as opposed to high variance.
Yeah, I would rather the offense not have to rely on the mistakes of the defense to score points. I'd rather they be consistent, create their own opportunities, because this is maybe more than any other game that I've seen in a while, more so about the mistakes of the Browns than the Chargers being able to figure out on offense themselves. Yeah. Not that Herbert and some of these guys didn't have good games themselves. They did, but it was more, I think, and Brian Baldinger kind of broke this down too. It was more just the Browns getting in their own way more so than the Chargers doing so well. So I know there was a lot of like, yeah, the Chargers offense and this run game, the passing attack. Wow, Herbert looks great. I don't know. We'll talk about that more later.
Yeah. Okay. Let's get to your narrative of the week. Spoiler alert, is the person in the title. So let's talk about Daiyan Henley, man. What do you have for us here?
Yeah, I'm just in love at this point, and I think we've all praised him at several spots this season. But I think you ended up tweeting the numbers of where he's at in the league and how he's generally like top 5 in most categories. Maybe that was Thomas Martinez. But it was you. Okay, it was you. He's looked fantastic statistically, and I think in this game you're starting to see that he really can do everything. And I just fell in love with watching him on film. Yes, we saw some of that live, but plays, bang, bang so fast, and then boom, suddenly we have, 50 plays. And I'm trying to remember who's doing what. Going back and watching him, I'm so impressed with what he can do at all 3 parts of being a linebacker, rushing, playing the run, and in coverage. He's a 3-down, 3-way kind of linebacker who can do everything. And what I'm finding with him, and I have to go back and see what I thought of him in college. Like, we liked him as a linebacker. I think we had him as top 3, top 4 linebacker in a kind of weak class. But what was so impressive is the way that he can contort his body and his overall body control on rushes, playing in run defense. There's so much clutter and trash, or a running back trying to block you in pass protection. What he's able to do with his body to maintain control, continue moving forward, like slip a defender, whatever, or slip an offensive lineman or a blocker. It's so impressive. The play, the highlight play, of course, was the almost interception. I didn't realize on that play that he was at the line of scrimmage, then dropped back 12 yards to break up that pass. We knew he was an athlete. We knew what he could do as a safety, trying to become a linebacker. But this is the best linebacker play we've seen in a bit. Regardless, if you think I know it's not saying a ton, if you think he's at least on par with what we've seen from Kaiser White or Drew Tranquill when in their best moments with the Chargers, okay, like if you think he's about there, that's fine. What he has this year that they did not have is the defense is really freaking good. The defense around him is very good. And you can actually, you see him elevated himself, but also like they're also a good defense. So he's not going to be forgotten, nor should he. And I think watching him, this is just the start. I thank goodness Navarro Bowman's going to stick around for a while, even if Jesse Minter leaves. But this is a guy who I think is a future Pro Bowl player at this point. I don't know how the conversation needs to change around the Chargers linebackers, and I don't know how we get Daiyan Henley more press in the media. He's certainly great with the media.
Yeah.
This guy is headed towards the Pro Bowl, and I don't know where, the media thinks he is. I don't know if 90% of NFL fans even know who Daiyan Henley even is. But they got to start figuring it out because he's playing awesome football right now, and it was a joy to watch him.
Yeah, the guys who are like the film nerds on Twitter, they've talked about him quite a few times, but we definitely need to get, some increase here. And you mentioning his pass breakup, he was really upset at himself for not breaking up that pass. But if you really watch that play, it's kind of insane. It shows a lot of growth from him, as well as Thomas Martinez right on cue in the chat. It points out that his growth from a drop standpoint is really, really impressive. So on that play, he starts on the line of scrimmage. They're doing a sim pressure, and then he drops. He's a hook defender. So the hook is 6 to 8 yards. That's his responsibility. And it previously in weeks earlier, he would get to the 6 to 8 yards and he's in position. But then you have like a 10-yard in-breaking dig route, and that's right where they throw the football, and it just goes right over Dayon's head.
Mm-hmm.
It sounds simple, but it's a really difficult thing to go from the line of scrimmage to back to 10 to 12 yards, which is not your responsibility. So you're playing the play correctly, but it still creates alleyways for the passing game that really good quarterbacks can take advantage of. And that happened a couple times against Mahomes. It happened a couple of times even against Justin Fields. So he drops to 6 to 8 yards, and you can see him kind of take a glance back, and he's like, oh, like there's somebody coming this way. So he drops even further and then makes a great play on the football, lays out and breaks up, and he probably should have caught it. So it's a sign of growth. But overall, like there's not many linebackers that can go from the line of scrimmage to 10 to 12 yard deep in breaking out and get their hands on the football. Like off the top of my head, that's like 6 players in the league. So it's the play in coverage has been fantastic. We've seen him match up with tight ends. He had some great pass breakups against Pat Freiermuth as well as Trey McBride. He had a couple good reps against David Njoku on Sunday.
Mm-hmm.
Now that he's getting the zone coverage, awareness, and instincts to show up, it creates some real opportunities for him to make some splash plays. That's probably what he's missing from like a national perspective is those interceptions, a forced fumble, sacks, things like that. But if you're looking for just a linebacker who is just playing really, really well in his first year as a starter, like Daiyan Henley is your guy. So you mentioned the numbers, and then I'll kind of give it back to you here real quickly. Just in the AFC linebackers, I went and looked at this because that's what Pro Bowl would be. It was for AFC. In overall defensive grade, he's 9th on PFF. In coverage grade, he's 3rd. In total defensive stops, he's 7th. In total run stops, he's 8th. In run stop percentage, he's 1st. In pass breakups, he's 1st. It's quite a resume. And then the Chargers obviously have their bye week, so you know that could be higher in total run stops and total tackles and total stops very quickly here. So the stats back it up. I think if you're watching the film, it backs up. I think talking about him as a Pro Bowl player is on par with what we're getting from Daiyan Henley. And we're just probably missing the splash plays for him to get that respect from the national media right now.
Yeah, those would be awesome. He's got 2 primetime games. Surprise, you have a new primetime game on your schedule.
Yep.
2 big primetime games. I don't know if Khalil Herbert is exactly the running back, but you know, Derrick Henry the following week would be a great guy to be able to bring down those splash plays. But he's headed in the right direction. And he's a future Pro Bowl linebacker. Do I mean this year? Not necessarily, although he can certainly get some of the votes. I don't know how that has usually shaken out. I don't usually pay attention to Pro Bowl voting for linebackers because it's never really particularly applied to the Chargers. It's been a minute since that's applied to the Chargers on a consistent basis.
Yeah,
but he's having an awesome season. I know, like even in the chat, and I think of it too, they couldn't even keep him active most games last year until they absolutely needed him.
Yeah,
but I think he's even surprised the Chargers this year, man. Like they did go sign Denzel Perryman. Then they drafted Junior Colson. They brought in Troy Dye. Obviously, they had Nick Niemann already. And Daiyan Henley was the 4th linebacker in the spring. It's only because Colson had his several issues that Henley's really even out there. Now, maybe that changes over the course of the season. Perryman's not playing, 80 snaps a game. But there's kind of a blessing in disguise there with Colson not being able to get out there because what we're seeing from Henley is tremendous.
Yeah. Double-edged sword, obviously, because Junior has been dealing with several different injuries and illnesses, and now he's dealing with another one. But, I think even if Junior does not play a whole lot this season, I think we would all feel very good about where the Chargers can get to from a linebacker perspective next year.
Oh, yeah.
We'll see what happens with Denzel. We'll see what happens with Troy Dye. Nick Niemann, I think, is a free agent at the end of the season. Mm-hmm. So they've got some work to do from a depth perspective, but we do expect Junior to eventually become the guy that he was drafted to be. Unfortunately, we're not getting an early return there, but I think part of this is also Navarro Bowman and like what he's been able to do with these players and Troy Dye coming in and looking, very functional, very good. And I think the Chargers just getting a lot better play from the linebacker position than a lot of people would have thought. So Dayon's been fantastic. His range is so much fun to watch. His athleticism is just pops like 3 or 4 times a game. He's got some big moments coming up. We'll see how he handles Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry. We'll see how he happens. A very pass-heavy Cincinnati Bengals offense. Yeah, he's got certainly an opportunity to increase his stock around the league, but he's been awesome so far this season.
Yeah, he has. Thank you, Telesco. You did it.
Just like so weird that his second to last third round pick is, or wait,
His last one.
last third round pick is going to be the best third round pick of them all. So
yeah, and it came from Staley, who didn't value linebackers. So thank you guys for like whatever happened there. Maybe it was an accident. They clicked the wrong name, but it worked.
It worked. He had a great quote in the offseason. I think we touched on it when he had said it, but he said the previous defense was confusing themselves, and the new defense is going to confuse the opposing offenses. And we've seen that come to fruition. I think that's been a big part of why he was not able to get on the field last year also. And again, another good point from Thomas Martinez. There's a real learning curve from linebacker. Jack Campbell had a very rough rookie season. We've seen that from Chargers rookies in the past. Although Jatavis Brown was weirdly like awesome as a rookie.
Yeah.
So it is a real thing, and Daiyan certainly could have, had a tough time going from a 3-3-5 Mickey Mouse defense to what Brandon Staley was trying to do, which confused even Derwin James. So yeah, it's a lot.
Yeah.
That's fair. Yeah. It's probably ambitious to call Daiyan the best third round pick.
Oh, I think you meant. I thought you meant just recently, but yes,
after Keenan,
of course,
after Keenan,
yes, after Keenan,
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
All right. Before we get to real or fake, of course, I have to tell you about our friends over at Prize Picks, the best and easiest way to consume daily fantasy sports. It's been a great partnership for us. They have great daily specials on the NBA, NFL, whatever kind of sport floats your boat. And it does continue to help support the show. So we do appreciate all you guys checking out prizepicks.com/guilty, code guilty at checkout. I've been told that it's easier to find the code if you do it from your laptop as opposed to on your phone. The best way to do it is with the link prizepicks.com/guilty. It does it automatically for you. It populates the code automatically. So please go check that out and have some fun with it. All right, let's get to real or fake here, Tyler. Buy, sell, real, fake. That's kind of the general sense here. Where do you want to start first in this conversation?
I'll go negative this time, and that's kind of tying back into the conversation about the run game. Really just looking at the Chargers offense overall and this idea that, oh, wow, the Chargers scored 27 points against a great Browns defense on the road. They're back. They're great. This passing game, Herbert, the numbers, they're awesome. Much like the run game, it's relying on the explosives. And I think the Browns made even more mistakes in coverage. Once again, the drop back, the passing game success rate is not great. And because I'm a dork, I found a perfect stat to sum up where the passing success rate was against the Browns. So in week 9, this past week, the Chargers passing success rate was 25.7%, worst in the NFL. Their passing success rate against the Patriots in 2020, when they scored 0 points and lost 45-0, was 4% higher at 29.1%. Okay. So they scored 0 points against the Patriots and lost 45-0. And their passing success rate was 3.5% higher than this past game against this Sunday, where they scored 27. Herbert's playing very good football. I think he played better against the Saints, but still, like overall, the last few weeks, he's been playing great football. It is generally never a Herbert issue. It's many issues. I think in particular was the offensive line and maybe some play calling and maybe the lack of a pass catcher. But whatever reason, they are not successful very much so in the passing game this whole season as is. But on Sunday, they weren't successful often either. And we can't look at this game and go, wow, Quentin Johnston's is going to be the guy. And, the passing game, wow, 27 against the Browns. That's just a sustainable thing. The offense is here. Like, I really hope we understand that the Chargers built their points up, for the most part, on explosives based on poor mistakes from the Browns. more so than what they did on a down basis. They cannot go into Kansas City or in the postseason go to Baltimore or Buffalo, like we just mentioned with the run game. They can't go entire stretches with like nothing. They can't hold the ball for 2 minutes and 50 seconds or whatever it was in 3 total drives in the third quarter. They can't do that. Now the defense is letting them do that, but which is great. And if that's how they win the Super Bowl, I don't give a flying fart. But that's probably not going to get you there. So they have to be better. I'm not saying they need to be first. No one here is asking for first. No one's even asking for top 10. But you got to get yourself towards the middle of the pack more, because you can't go these stretches where 45-second drives, 3 in a row, where it's like 56 seconds, a minute and 5 seconds. You can't do that. And that's the run game, of course, and the pass game, because the defense is playing great. I don't know how sustainable it is, especially if you're losing corners, to then go into Baltimore and try to win games.
Yeah, we talked about the defenses like dominating the Browns, right? And like the passing defense was so good, and like the run defense was great, and rightfully so. The Browns had 21 first downs on offense. Now, granted, a lot of that was on that garbage time drive, but up until that garbage time drive, they had 16 first downs. The Chargers had 13. So the Browns had more first downs in this game and scored 10 points with 1 garbage time touchdown. The Chargers were 5 of 14 on third downs, and it's really difficult to beat very good teams in the NFL when you are playing offense like that. And, I caught some heat yesterday when I said that the Ravens and the Chiefs games were probably losses. And people were like, well, the Chargers are playing so well, and like they're 5-3, and like Harbaugh could beat anybody. Yes, that's why I use the word probably and not definitely. But when you look at the Ravens, they are a historically good offense right now. They are averaging 7.5 yards per play. They are averaging more EPA per play than basically anybody in the last 5 years. Their EPA per play number, yards per play number, points per game, whatever statistic you want to look at it, is on par with like the 2018 Chiefs and like the 2007 Panthers and like the greatest show on turf. Like the Baltimore Ravens are a historically good offense. If you go into that game and you have 13 first downs, the Baltimore Ravens are going to hang 55 on Jesse Minter's defense because they're going to be on the field all day long. So, yeah, great against the Browns. If you're trying to beat playoff teams, it's very difficult to win this way, is basically kind of what our point is here. And that's not to take away credit from Justin Herbert and Ladd. Right. And I think they're doing some good things on offense. But like we're trying to paint this as like, this is still not a good offense. They just create some explosive plays every now and then. And that's how they're winning games. And again, that can work against teams like the Browns. Very difficult to go into Arrowhead and win a game like that. Very difficult to go win a game against the Ravens like that. Even against the Bengals, I think it's a very difficult way to win like that.
Yeah, it can be. I don't expect them to have a, break the damn game at this point, but we'd hate for them to go into the postseason and go, well, I need to score how many now? Okay. And then their success rate is 23%. Like you can't bring that into the postseason with you. Again, we're seeing good things. I thought the Browns were biting hard on play action, and that opened up Ladd McConkey to practically just like field punts.
Yeah, he was chilling a couple times.
There's a couple times he's just like, okay, thanks. They were biting hard. I thought several times they used McConkey well to get him open. They used him to free up the boundary guy. They went after the boundary several times because for whatever reason, everyone wanted to just hang around Ladd McConkey. So they're doing some good things, but they need to do gooder things more frequently.
We need to be gooder and more funner.
Gooder and funner. Exactly. As long as we get one of those things. And if they get gooder, they will be funner.
Yeah. Jacob talking about the pressures. This is a huge part of the success rate. Mm-hmm. 6 sacks against the Browns. And like the Browns are a very talented front.
Totally.
But, this is a group that, we expect, or at least expected better than that. 6 sacks is a ton in the NFL. There are 3 other hits that Justin Herbert took. And it's very difficult to sustain offense like that. So we talked about the offensive line briefly on Sunday. I think a fake thing about the offensive line is the tackle concern. It's a very big if and very big qualifier, but if you take out the Myles Garrett 2 sacks against Rashawn Slater, he basically was perfect. Like he was the usual Rashawn Slater. He just
Mhm.
happened to get beat the 2 times, and Myles Garrett happened to get home. It happens. I thought Joe Alt played pretty well too, and he was credited with 5 pressures. I think 3 of those should have been credited to Trey Pipkins. I think the guard play in particular on Sunday
Yeah.
was rough, and Trey's not playing his natural position. He's never played guard before. I've been willing to give him a little bit of leeway here. This was probably the worst game of Zion Johnson's career, I would say, which is saying a lot considering he's had some rough games against Chris Jones and things like that.
Mhm.
He was just consistently in bad positions, and Duke Manyweather calls it postures. He was not in good postures on stunts or anything like that. It was a brutal guard game on Sunday, both on the ground and in the pass protection. And like that is really hurting their drives. So
Yeah.
we talked about a potential lineup change, on Sunday. I think I'm probably leaning towards potentially replacing Trey just because it would be very difficult for me to like build an athletic enough line of scrimmage if Zion is not out there, and Zion at least has some good moments as a run blocker,
Right.
but the interior issues are so bad right now. And I tweeted out a screenshot of this. The fundamentals of protecting against stunts, like it's one thing if you're just getting beat individually, but they are just consistently not connected, and it's creating some major issues right now. So that is one thing about the Chargers offense that has been an issue all season. It was a huge issue on Sunday, and outside of the tackle play, I thought the much bigger issue, again, shocker, was the interior trio.
Yeah, the tackle play got the more run, right, because of Myles Garrett and the fact that he had 4 sacks in about 4.5 seconds. And he was great, and it sucked, but he was really, really good. I just had to sit there and be impressed because he was that good. But yes, the interior, that was going to be my reel, I guess. Basically, that I don't need this. I don't think they can get rid of 3 starters next year, but I think they should at least get rid of 2 of them and find a way to add more talent to eventually get rid of the third, whatever they end up doing. I
Yeah.
was hoping for more from this group. We've been patient enough. We've criticized them along the way, but we've tried to be patient. But with Zion, it just is somehow getting worse. Their communication with Bozeman is not there. They are not connecting or disconnecting at the right times. They're not passing things off at the right times. Everything looks like a surprise to Zion. Everything looks like, oh, shoot, I'm supposed to do that. But it's the same thing. You could grab a screenshot every single game of the exact same mistake. And I bet you could. I don't know if this is still the case, but there was, I think for the first 7 or 8 games, Zion allowed a hit like every single game in a row. And it's probably the exact same play over and over again. It's rarely someone does an arm over and beats Zion Johnson. It's rarely like, oh, Zion Johnson gets bull rushed and gets knocked over. I rarely
One-on-one, he's generally very good.
Yeah, which is, I don't get it. I don't get why, but it's just like him and Bozeman and the connection there. It's so off. And then, yeah, Trey Pipkins was rough. And I've kind of done he's been good, but he's switching positions. He's been good, but he's still learning things. He was just bad, man. That was a bad game from him. I think he's done some good things in the run game. I've been impressed occasionally with what he's able to do in the pass game. He's learning a lot. He's a taller offensive lineman trying to play guard. It's very difficult for the guys who can get low and who are used to getting low. But yeah, it was very, very rough from Trey Pipkins. So this group has been disappointing. I don't know what I expected. I don't know where I had them, but I definitely expected a lot more than this.
Yeah, I was just looking at this. PFF has a new thing where they do a pass protection win rate. They haven't updated it yet for week 9. But heading into week 9, Zion, I think, was like bottom quarter of the league, and Trey Pipkins was like bottom 5 in the league among guards. Like it's not been pretty. People who have listened to the show for a long time know that I defended Trey for quite a long time, because of his play at offensive tackle. And I still believe that, like, if he were to play offensive tackle, he could give them serviceable and reliable tackle play. But it's a very difficult transition to guard, and the Chargers immediately just pegged him as the starter. And I was like, okay, that's interesting. Like maybe they're just trying to give him a ton of reps, but it's not really panning out. So I don't know if Jamari Sawyer is the answer. I kind of doubt it based off of what he put out there beforehand. But it's tough. And people are saying like, oh, they should have traded for one. They should have traded one. In the last 5 years, there's been one NFL guard traded mid-season. One. And that player was a backup to the team that he went to. Teams are not trading starting caliber guards during the season. It just does not happen. This year was the first year in the last 5 years where a starting tackle got traded with Cam Robinson, and he was a backup on the Jaguars. So offensive linemen do not get traded in the midseason. It just doesn't happen. The best path forward for the Chargers is to figure their communication issues out, which we've been saying, or make a lineup change. And I don't know who that player is. I think the Chargers would probably pick Sam Mustipher. But man, it's just so frustrating to see the consistent issues just popping up over and over and over again, as people are kind of pointing out in the chat. Next offseason, I think they got to be very aggressive in the guard department and go pay whoever is out there in the free agency department. So it's just so disappointing. I like Zion and Trey as individual players. They're very, obviously outstanding leaders in the locker room. They're great people, but it's just not. It's not coming together. It's not gelling. And that's such an important piece of the offensive line. And we've seen less talented offensive lines play better football than the Chargers are getting right now. So it's just sometimes these pieces don't fit together. And unfortunately, you probably got to move on in the offseason.
Yeah, that's the best way to put it. That's what it feels like watching this run game. The pieces don't fit together. I think there's good pieces there. You could individually convince me why each of them has a good season, but then putting them next to each other, the pieces are not fitting. And yeah, what did we say? It was 29th in passing success rate and 28th or 27th in rush success rate. Hey, that's your interior for you.
Yeah. The good news for the Chargers is they do have a very easy schedule coming up. Outside of the Ravens and the Chiefs, they don't play too many great teams. They play the Falcons, who are a good team. So their formula is very clearly Justin Herbert, go be great 5 to 8 times a game. Defense be awesome, and so far, so good. And we'll see. That should be enough to get them into the playoffs in this kind of AFC. But I think they've got to have some tough conversations about the guard play in the offseason. All right, let's get back to a positive one. Shout out Tarheeb still, man. I watched the tape back, and I kind of expected, okay, he had the 3 plays that contributed he had a pass breakup. He had a pass breakup that led to an interception. And then I was kind of expecting kind of the same play from Tarheeb Still, who's been a little bit inconsistent. The highs are great. He's had some great pass breakups over the last few weeks. But then I turned on the tape, and this was by far the best game of his career. I thought he was outstanding. There were multiple times where he was running the route essentially for Cedric Tillman. And my favorite thing about his performance is he was flipping back and forth between the slot and outside, and the play was top-notch at both spots. His interception came against Jerry Jeudy, where he kind of loses leverage for a second, and then he undercuts, and it's a great play on the ball. Alohi Gilman's interception, I would credit to Tarheeb Still as well. He's lined up against Cedric Tillman, who is a 6'4", legit X-receiver on the outside. And he essentially is in perfect position, walls Cedric Tillman off of his route, and causes an overthrow, which Alohi Gilman comes down with. That was happening every play. I mentioned the Morgan Fox bat at the line. He was right in position to get an interception again if Morgan Fox does not tip that pass at the line. So I was just so impressed with the way that he was sticking to whatever receiver his responsibility was. The pass breakup that Elijah Molden got the interception on, incredibly high IQ play from him. The athleticism to get up and hit that ball down, also very, very high level stuff. We've been very positive about Cam Hart, but we have not seen the ceiling of what Tarheeb has given them. And that came together in a huge way on Sunday. And I I struggled to think of a better cornerback performance from a Chargers player since like prime Casey Hayward. And the Chargers haven't had like great cornerback play, so it's not like it's very similar to the Daiyan conversation. But this was, since I've been studying the Chargers tape, this was the best cornerback performance I've seen since Casey Hayward, and he was lights out on Sunday against the Browns.
Wow, that's high praise. I did not. I watched more of the front seven than the corner, so I didn't get a ton of opportunity to watch Tarheeb still. But that's high praise. Would you have guessed, chat, that he's been targeted 19 times the last 2 weeks?
Yeah.
And for him to have only given up what he's given up so far, which is also 0 touchdowns, and having the interception, the pass breakup, like, I don't know. I don't know what I would have expected from Tarheeb still this year. I didn't know how much he was going to play at all, especially with Jaw Taylor being named the starter in week 1 and really the whole offseason.
Yeah.
They're getting far more out of him than I would have expected. It's by far the thing we've been the most wrong about, I think, other than
100%.
maybe this interior offensive line, which we thought would be much better. Not that we didn't see the potential with Tarheeb still. I just wouldn't have thought he would walk in as a rookie in the middle of the season and be this good. And like you said, give that great of a performance. I can't quantify if it's better than this or that or whatever, but the fact that that's even in the conversation is incredible.
Yeah. I thought about it and I was like, off the top of my head, I was like, okay, Michael Davis against the Bills and Stephon Diggs is probably up there.
Yeah, that was good.
There was probably a Chris Harris game in there that I'm forgetting, even at that stage of his career. There might have been a second Michael Davis game. Asante Samuel Jr. has had some great games, but probably his debut against Washington is probably his best game ever. Maybe one of the Chiefs game where he had an interception. But yeah, man, Tarheeb, like he was just in the hip pocket of these receivers all day long. And again, they're not elite players, right? But Cedric Tillman, Jay Jeudy, Elijah Moore, they're all good NFL players, good NFL receivers. Yeah. And so for him to cause all 3 interceptions, be in position for a 4th, have another forced incompletion, it was outstanding, man. Cam Hart is a much better run defender, but Tarheeb still, I think his ceiling as a pass coverage defender, if he can continue to do this, is crazy right now. So you mentioned the targets. Over the last 4 games, he's been targeted 28 times. He has 4 forced incompletions, 3 pass breakups, and an interception. That's pretty good cornerback play, man. It is really, really good what they're getting out from him. So it's such a blessing for the Chargers to be able to have these 2 cornerbacks picked in the 5th round be able to play like this. So we've been kind of negative on today's show, mostly about the offense. We spent a lot of time, singing the praises of the defense on Sunday. Mm-hmm. So I think it's only fair that we kind of wrap with Tarheeb still and his performance to kind of finish out today's show.
Yes, Thomas Martinez points out once again, bringing up his contributions here.
Yeah,
we all were like, ooh, and we knew everybody they drafted, which is the first time that we've known everyone. And we were here on day 3. We had the most views on day 3 because we knew so many of these names. I had no idea who Tarheeb still was, and the numbers in film did not show what he's on the field right now and what he's doing on the field. So whatever they found in him, awesome. As Jacob points out, Cam Hart, Tarheeb still being back-to-back 5th rounders, more impactful than anything in the Telesco era, probably. I guess it's kind of like that Desmond King, Jatavis Brown, kind of cycle that they had for a bit there. But it's also, and that's maybe also why the Chargers flat out didn't trade a 4th rounder or 5th rounder today.
Yeah,
because shoot, you get this. Hey, 3 more years after this of cost-controlled starters is incredible. And then last one from Jacob. When Fulton comes back, who do you bench? I think with Jaw Taylor now hurt. We'll see how that goes, obviously, but I think it's Fulton and Hart, and then probably some combination of Still and Taylor. But you don't take Hart off the field. Fulton, you don't take off the field. And the slot can kind of just work itself out.
Yeah, so when Fulton comes back, he's your outside corner. I think with Cam and with Tarheeb, I think you could probably rotate them a bit, but I would put Still as your starting slot corner.
Yeah.
I do think that's where he's been more impactful so far. I think most of his good moments have come from the slot. So It's a good problem to have. It's probably why they didn't want to give up, a second and a third round pick for Marshawn Lattimore, which I would have been in favor of, to be completely honest with you and be transparent with everybody here. But with the way that these two corners are playing, man, it gives them such flexibility. And long term wise, because Tarheeb can play in the slot, it can allow them to be aggressive in the draft. If they want to go get like a first round corner, they can go do that because Tarheeb can start in the slot. If they want to go get a veteran starting outside corner, great. If they want to bring back Christian Fulton, great. Like Tarheeb's position flexibility is going to give them a lot of options going forward. So to me, the best trio of corners the Chargers have is Fulton, Hart, and Still. Those are your three starters. All due respect to Asante Samuel Jr., he's not touching the field when he gets back, in my opinion.
Yeah, unfortunately, even if the play was worse than it currently is from those guys, you still got to see what you have, because Asante Samuel Jr. has 8 to 9 more games as a Charger, I think, and then writing's on the wall, unfortunately.
Yeah, and he might not even come back. So we'll see. That's exactly what Jim Harbaugh said. All right, Tyler, any other final thoughts from the film before we get to some of these super chats, and then we'll head out for the evening?
Nope. Let's jump into these super chats.
Okay. Appreciate you guys. Some of these people I think are already gone, so I apologize for that. The first one here from Mexi Gamer Dark Master. He says he watched all 22 film for the first time today, and however much we need to pay or reach in draft center, Bozeman is legit hurting the run game. So bad.
Yep. Anybody in the interior is good enough for me. If you want to find a guard, convert to center, or a tackle, convert to guard, or whatever, I'm all for it. We were pounding that drum this offseason, and please go get multiple bodies. And unfortunately, with Hymus, with McFadden, they've shown they don't trust those guys.
Yeah.
So time to overhaul the spot.
It's super cool that they just handed Hymus the center 2 position, and then 6 weeks into the season, they decide, let's go with Sam Mustipher instead. It's great.
Yeah. Interestingly, that's probably the least competition they had at any spot this offseason was interior offensive line. And I think Joe Alt right tackle, but whatever, that's expected.
Yeah. No, it's a good point though. I mean, they walked out of the second practice and said, this is our trio. This is who we're going with. And basically at every other position, they were like, we got some competition. And they at least took the bulk of that into training camp.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Envy Talent in here says, I'm pulling my hair out waiting to see DJ and Herb actually have a game. The tease is real. But to be honest, I think I was thinking we'd go edge for the future. I don't know if he means draft or not. I don't know if he's still in here, but I think we're all kind of waiting to see what Chark can bring to the offense. And we'll see, like I said, hopefully he can play on Sunday.
I'm an idiot. I thought he meant Derwin James. Duh. Yes, very soon. Very soon.
Yeah. Back here with another one. He says, since I moved to Texas, I missed the lives, but thank you for the consistent updates and well thought out Charger takes. I appreciate you guys all year. I appreciate the back-to-back super chats, Envy Talent. Hopefully we can get you back in here for another live show in the future.
Yeah, Envy Talent used to be in here all the time, man. One of our most regular guys contributing in the chat. So good to see you. Hope the move was okay.
Yeah, hopefully all is well down there in Texas. Ryan B with one of the funniest chats in here that I can remember. This is a random sidetrack, but it's been stuck in his head for days. He says, do you remember how excited we were when the Chargers signed special teams ace Ryan Smith? Oh man, what a time. They signed him. He got injured in training camp, came back, played a quarter, and then got injured for the rest of the season. So yeah, that was something. What a indeed random sidetrack from Ryan.
That has never crossed my mind until today. I don't think I've thought of Ryan Smith, formerly the Buccaneers player, I believe. I don't think I've thought of him since he was on the Chargers. So hope he's well. But yes, there have been several signings where we go, oh, that's interesting. That should be something cool. Let's see what happens. And then nothing happens. James Jones was a Charger for like 3 preseason games. Just stuff like that. So that's a good trivia one day. If you had gone to my head, I forgot Ryan Smith's name, but now that you mentioned him, it's coming back to me.
Yeah. I mean, there's other random signings that have actually like played for the Chargers, but yeah, Ryan Smith was certainly a random one. Hopefully, DJ Chark doesn't suffer the same fate. Chris Lewis in here. I don't know if there was a question attached to this or not, but I appreciate the super chat here. Chris has been here in here quite often as well. So thank you, Chris, for the super chat. If you're still in the chat and do have a question, feel free and fire away real quick before we head off.
This was his next comment. It looks like teams are still trying to injure Justin Herbert. Big problem. He's from his rookie season. All I've heard is that he just does not complain. He doesn't like showing opposing defenses that he's even hurt. So yeah, the refs don't really care. They just kind of let it happen. And you can get an $11,000 fine and no suspension for trying to snap his leg in half.
That was crazy to me. People were saying, like New Orleans, people were saying like, oh, he's never had any issues like this before. I don't really give a shit. One of the dirtiest plays we've ever seen on the football field. So that was bad. Myles Garrett looped across on one of the stunts that Trey just completely whiffed on. And like you see Myles Garrett like literally pick Justin up and like put his whole body weight into a potential sack. Like this is the definition of roughing the passer. And they were just like, nah, we're good. And then I think it was Michael Hall threw Herbert down like a legit full second after Herbert let the ball go. So there were 2 or 3 times where on Sunday they definitely should have gotten some roughing the passer penalties. And Jim Harbaugh said they took some of the clips from these past few games and sent it to the league as a way to like, hey, like, look out for this. So hopefully that does the trick. Because it's happening like once a game where it's like, are we really not calling the roughing the passer penalty here? Because this is like textbook roughing. And, you know, I hate being like, oh, the ref's this kind of guy, but it definitely is an issue.
Yeah, there are bad calls, and then there's just flat out not protecting the most important part of the NFL football game.
Yeah.
Like you probably should protect Justin Herbert and the quarterbacks. I mean, you're flexing the Chargers to prime time, not because of, you know, J.K. Dobbins. Like you want Herbert and Burrow out there. Protect Justin Herbert. If Harbaugh made that clip out, that cut up, that's awesome. Can he send it to the offensive line meeting room as well?
Yeah, that'd be great. That'd be great. He did compare it to prime Shaquille O'Neal, calling it a hack-a-Shaq type thing. The difference is that Shaq got to shoot free throws when it happened. So, you know, the officiating part needs to happen. But Jim Harbaugh said on the Colin Cowherd show that he thinks the thing he thinks the most about on the Chargers is protecting Justin Herbert. So great, Jim. Let's make sure we protect that guy because 9 hits in a game is way too many.
Think harder, be betterer, and have funner.
Oh, good stuff. Good stuff. All right, you guys. That's going to do it for us today. We appreciate all of you here in the chat. If you're watching this on replay, if you're listening to this, make sure and give us some feedback. Let us know what you guys think about today's show. We will be back on Thursday for our usual preview show of the upcoming matchup with the Tennessee Titans. It's quite a revenge game on both fronts. Kenneth Murray, Sebastian Joseph Day, of course, on the Titans. The Chargers have 5 or 6 Tennessee Titans defenders. You just know that Elijah Molden's going to be geared up to play that team. I don't know how much Kenneth Murray and Sebastian Joseph Day are going to be juiced up. There's really nobody that they're connected with on the Chargers, but, you know, it is what it is. Should be a lot of fun, though, on Sunday afternoon. All right. That's going to do it for us today. This has been the Guilty as Charged podcast. See you guys next time. As always, bolt up.